I'm a dork, I don't mind getting dirty, and I think I'm a unicorn, which makes me strive to be the very best at everything that I do. But ultimately, I am a fighter. I never give up, and I'm rarely afraid. But this is me a year ago, and this is me on a good day when I think I'm cute. So what happened? Well, picture it, it's 3 a.m., I haven't slept. I really haven't slept more than a couple hours in weeks, and I'm in tears. I finally reach out to my chief HR officer, and I tell her, well, I beg her, please, help me find a safe place to hide so I can find another job. Now, she lived in another time zone, and she reaches out immediately, and she tells me that she's willing to listen, which she does intently. And she promises me there'll be an investigation and gives me some resources. Of these resources, one lets me know that I can take some time off, and at this point, I have no choice but to. And I think to myself during this time, how did this happen? I'd just come to this organization 6 months prior, and I'd come because of its renowned culture of diversity and inclusion. But as I continued my research, I discovered I was the product of incivility and bullying in the workplace. And I think to myself again, how did this happen? I had been developing psychologically safe environments for over 20 years in the classroom and in HR. And for over a decade, I'd lived overseas, bringing together vastly different cultures, understanding that behaviors and intent don't always equate. So what did I miss? Well, this person wasn't yelling and screaming at me. They weren't physically assaulting me, which would have been difficult in a virtual world. But I was afraid. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. And even their name caused me to panic. It took the support of my manager, my HR team, family, and a psychologist. But I am a fighter. I never give up. And I'm rarely afraid. And I'm not alone. 30% of our US workforce will experience bullying at one point in their career, and 19% will be witness to it, meaning a full 49% will be affected by bullying, and 98% will be affected by incivility. And the difference between bullying and incivility is that bullying is repeated, targeted behavior towards a specific individual causing distress, while incivility is an overall behavior that one just exudes that causes distress to those that they interact with. 12% of our workforce have already left their organizations due to incivility, and bullying has cost $223 billion in turnover alone over a 5-year period of time. But that's not the only cost. In a poll of 800 managers over 17 industries on incivility, there was a distinct impact to productivity, quality of work, and a ripple effect to customers. Productivity was affected because 80% spent time worrying about an incident after it had happened. 63% wasted time worrying about a perpetrator and trying to avoid them. And 47% just spent less time at work compared to their counterparts. And quality was affected because 78% lowered their commitment to their organization. 38% intentionally lowered their quality of work, which led to a decline in performance by 66%. And this did ripple down because 25% directly took out their frustrations on customers. Now, you'd think in a virtual world that the impact would be far less, but it's actually far worse because this social media haze comes upon us where we feel more removed from each other, allowing us to say and do things we normally wouldn't in a face-to-face environment. And even though there's a distinct push towards cultures of diversity and inclusion, there's a rise in incivility and bullying. And that is due to the lack of leadership in developing education and setting cultural norms in a diverse environment. Because we'll always have the classic bully, but the real effect is those that are unintended. Imagine if we took a professional football player and an Olympic swimmer, both wonderful in their environments, put them in the same arena and said nothing more than be respectful, meet others where they're at, and assume good intent. We hire the very best talent, and as such, they're going to do what they've done historically to be successful, even if that means tackling someone, which often leads to people getting hurt and everyone loses. But what if we thought of Maybe a more similar environment where we all hone the exact same skills over 10, 20, 30 years, maybe even taught others. What if we took drivers from every country in the world and brought them onto the same roadway, neglected to put up signs, and gave them the green light? We all know the speed limit is 65 miles per hour, right? Or wait, maybe that's 80 clicks, and that means I gotta convert 0.6 miles to kilometers, or is that kilometers to miles? Well, maybe we just don't have any speed limit at all. Well, at least we know what side of the road to drive on, right? See, even if there are no accidents, the sheer amount of energy it would take to engage each individual driver just to understand what side of the road they were driving on would be enormous. There'd be slowdowns and bottlenecks. But again, we hire the very best talent, and as such, they are driven to results. So think about those individuals in their semis, determined to get from point A to point B, no matter who's in their way. Think about the wake that they leave behind. Worse yet, think about those looking at this environment thinking, the only way I'm going to succeed is to adopt that behavior. Our cultures are in jeopardy from the spread of incivility and bullying. But there are 3 ways that we can safeguard our cultural organizations. And that is in setting clear rules of engagement, early and ongoing education, and swift action if an incident occurs. And as leaders, we cannot leave our people without clear rules of engagement. And every organization will be different. I mean, picture a broker on the stock exchange floor, yelling, screaming, hands in the air, trying to get attention. This is what we expect. This is what we envision in our minds. But think about the exact same person with those behaviors in most corporate meeting rooms. That's a surefire way to lower collaboration and destroy psychological safety. Now, that's a very clear example. But what about a murky one, such as, do we hold meetings outside of normal business hours? If we're a global organization, that may be absolutely essential in driving business effectively. But if we're a local organization, that just may pull people away from families, cause psychological distress, and disrupt work-life balance. So it's not important exactly what rules you set for your organization. What's key here is that they are clearly communicated, understood, and adhered to by everyone. Which leads me to our second key, which is early and ongoing education. Because incivility and bullying is not just yelling and screaming at someone or being physically assaulted. There are 3 tactics that bullies use, and those categories are passive, active, and ways in which they recruit others. Passive actions could be things like not answering communications. Now, we all get emails that get lost in our inbox, and IMs that come in when we're in meetings that we neglect to answer. But it's when it becomes repeated to the point that it affects another person's ability to do their job effectively that it becomes a problem. It may be also not offering pertinent information that you know is important for someone to do their job effectively. And active actions could be gaslighting, where a perpetrator keeps a target constantly guessing, questioning their ability to recall the past and their sanity, and unable to predict the future. It could also be refusing access to resources such as people, tools, or meetings. And the ways in which they recruit others can be as simple as making a joke in a meeting where everyone's laughing at your expense and you feel humiliated. It might also be pulling someone aside, questioning your competence, so that they adopt the perpetrator's sentiments and start pushing you away as well. Now, we all can exhibit some of these behaviors some of the time, but the real measure is the effect that it has on an individual. Because there are signs when someone is being affected by incivility and bullying. They may start voicing distress. Do you ever hear someone saying things like, I can never predict what this person's going to say or do? Or, I'm unsure how to behave with this person in this situation. Maybe it's more overarching, such as, I'm stressed, burnt out. I can't sleep anymore and I can't put work away. You may also notice avoidance behaviors. Are they coming to work less, calling in sick more? Or Even if they come into work, are they just avoiding a specific person in the hallway or in meetings? And even if they come to meetings, are they taking a step back from leadership positions? Are they being less collaborative, not offering their opinions? Or maybe in this virtual world, you just notice there are always cameras off when that specific person's in the room. You may also notice a change in performance. Are they taking a step back from the organization as a whole, not being as collaborative or offering their services like they're used to? Or you may start getting complaints from customers and coworkers about their behavior. Now, we do look to our managers to be the first line of defense in looking for these signs, but often our managers are our perpetrators. So we need to educate all of our employees so that they are aware of these signs and encourage them to take action. And action can take the form of reaching out to an individual, asking them, "Are you okay?" Raising concerns to management and leadership, or maybe filing a report with HR. And the key here is that it's early and ongoing education. Because often when we come to an organization, the first things we get are training on privacy, security, even harassment, but rare is the organization that we have any training on incivility and bullying. And that is a mistake, because often we say, our people are our greatest assets. So does it make any sense not to protect them? Because the health implications are enormous. They can be physical, such as hypertension, chronic fatigue, and as visible as skin disorders, to psychological, causing anxiety, depression, and most frightening to me is a stress brain, which is a neurological structural change in the brain itself, where the prefrontal cortex shrinks, affecting learning and memory, and the amygdala enlarges, making us more reactive to stressors, to behavioral. Whether we become more avoidant of collaboration and risk-taking, or we start overthinking, where we exhibit behaviors such as spending hours crafting the perfect email to elicit a better response, if not a more predictable one, to adoption, where our targets become our perpetrators. And once these health implications begin, they are very difficult and time-consuming to overcome, which leads me to our third key, which is swift action if an incident occurs. And every incident will be very unique, requiring a delicate hand. But the key here is that it's dealt with immediately, because incivility and bullying are a disease, and we're at pandemic levels. As leaders, we are responsible for the bottom line, financially, but more importantly, for our people. These are our sons and daughters, our brothers and sisters, our mothers and fathers. I am a fighter and never give up. And my organization had an amazing response. I was blessed and lucky, but that's not always the case. And as leaders, we must be proactive, not reactive, because the cost is too great. Thank you.